Hello, my name is Peter Raymer, and today we're going to talk about D365 sets. So sets are part of the collection classes that we've been talking about for a little bit. There's arrays, lists, sets, maps, as well as structs. So these allow us to store lists of different values or collection of values, depending on how you want to describe it. And there's extra methods on these different types of classes that make them useful in different scenarios. So sets are really useful in that they only store unique values. So this can be really helpful if you're while select looping through different records and you don't necessarily know that you've got unique sets of records. You can add rec IDs, say, to a set list and keep track of only the unique values and then come back and process those to make sure that you're not, say, processing the same record twice. There's other scenarios too, but that's really the special ability for sets, is that you can check if a value already exists in the set. You can also, if you try to add an additional value that isn't unique, it will just ignore that value and only add those unique values. So let's jump in. So the first thing that we want to look at is how to define a set. So similar to our other types of collections, we use new set as the type of the class, and then we pass in this enum types. And types can store different types of objects or specify different types of objects. So we can pass in sets of classes, dates, int64s, records, etc. So it can be extremely useful to use these different types. The trick is with this set, every element or item within this collection has to be the same data type. So in this case, we're going to store a set of strings. Additionally, we could use this extended type num to get the base type out of an extended data type like sales ID. So the underlying type of this would be string. This would be the same thing as saying type string. I typically just specify types, but you can use this if you'd like. All right, next, how do we add elements to a set? Each of these collections kind of have their different ways of adding. In this case, we actually just use the method called add, and then you specify the value, so we're adding A, B, and C to this set. Pretty straightforward. Next, how do we actually loop through and print out the values in a set? First thing we need to do is we use this method called getEnumerator. GetEnumerator is going to return a variable of type setEnumerator. So first we need to declare that variable and assign it, but then we can use that to loop through the various values in our set. Now, one thing to note about sets is even though we added A, B, and C, it's not guaranteed that when we print them out that they're necessarily going to be in the same order. The system's going to store them in the most the best way for performance of checking for uniqueness later. So that's probably, alphabetical or index. We don't really know, but that's just something to know, is you can't count on the order of a set. You can count that they're only going to be unique values, but if you need something in a specific order, then use a list for that application. All right, so once we have our set enumerator, we call move next inside of a while loop. This is both going to check to see, do we have another element in this set, as well as move it to the next element for us to read out. After that, we call .current. That's going to return out the current value that we've iterated to. And we are storing it in a variable, in this case just called value. Then we can print out the value. So in this case, it's going to print out the values A, B, C. Again, not necessarily in that order with a set, but we know that they're unique. So okay, let's look at what would it look like if we were to add additional values. So I guess, talking through that, if I were to add set.add C on top of this, again, maybe even multiple times, right? I know this is a little ridiculous when we're passing it in here, but you may have a loop and you don't know what the values are. The system's not going to actually add these. We're still only going to have those 3 values. So that's really the power of a set. All right, what other pieces of a set are kind of really useful? We've got the remove method that's super useful. So you can call remove A, and the system will go find A wherever it happens to be and remove it out of there. That's really useful that allows you to do that with sets. All right, next, what are some other just useful methods on sets? We can actually use elements, and elements counts the number of items within the set. So if I add 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3 in this example, remember all of these duplicates are not actually going to be added. So this is going to return there are 3 values in the set. So pretty useful. It's useful to check, if we have 0 elements or not. Okay, but then I want to get to my favorite part of sets and how they're really useful, and the easiest way to show that is actually with an example. If we look at the docu-history form code and we look in this execute query, it gives us an example of using the in method. So the in method will basically just check, hey, do we have this element that we're passing it somewhere in this set? And then we can do something where we do exactly this. We have an if statement that says, if we don't already have this unique element in the set, go ahead and add it. Maybe we do something else, right? In theory, you could just add it because it won't add duplicates, but maybe you've got some other code that you want to run, add to, say, a container or a string or something at the same time. But this is extremely powerful. I see this regularly with sets where you're looping through some records. You don't necessarily know if those records are unique, if your joins are one-to-one where you're going to get a unique set of records. And so in those cases, you can use an in statement to check if it's already in a set, and then add to a set, get a unique list of values, then go back through, loop through those values, and process those records and make sure that you're processing only once. So definitely really helpful. There's some additional helper values specifically for sets that are like what you would expect for math. So I'll just show you kind of this article here. There's difference, which will show you the difference between 2 sets. There's intersection and union. So if we take, for an example, you got set 1 with A and B in it and set 2 with B and C. If you run intersection, right, it's going to see what are the values that are the same between these 2 sets, and we're going to get out B. If you run the difference method, we're going to get the value A out of that. And then if we do the union, though I wonder if, I'll have to check this, if it's A or A and C. Maybe it's checking just set 1, I guess. If we, so items that are in set 1 but are not in set 2. See, we've got it right here. So it'll return A. And then if we have the union between 2 sets, then it's going to add all of the unique elements. So A, B, and C in this case. So definitely super useful. All right, one other thing. So again, what can be confusing with these collection of objects is there's set enumerator and set iterator. It's definitely a best practice to use set enumerator whenever you can, but set iterator can be helpful if you need to modify the object as you're looping through it. So the syntax for that is you declare a set iterator. Then instead of calling set.getEnumerator, you actually instantiate the set iterator, pass in the set, and you get out the set iterator. Then it's slightly different syntax when you need to loop through it. You use .more to check if there exists more elements in this set. It returns a Boolean of true or false. Then within the loop, after you've processed kind of your first value, you call set iterator.next to iterate to the next value within your collection. And then use, instead of .current, you're going to use .value to pull out the current value, whatever data type it is, in this case a string, out, and then we can print it out. So definitely super useful there. And then kind of lastly, what's common with all collection objects is you can use this .pack function to turn a set into a container. And then you can use set : create to turn this container back into a set. And so that's really useful. Containers can be stored in a table. So maybe if you need to store it for, say, a batch job or something like that, this is really useful. So that's really it. Sets, I find, are extremely useful because they only have unique values. Normally you'd have to write, a bunch more code to loop through something, determine if it's unique, then add it. In this case, we don't have to write any of those codes. We just take advantage of the .in method for us and the fact that sets aren't going to accept non-duplicate objects. It's only going to contain unique values. Okay, hopefully you learned something new. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you watching. If you liked the video, click the like button. I also invite you to push the subscribe button as well. If there's other topics you would like to see a video on, please post in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you.